Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and I'm so excited you're here for this month's topic, which is all about self-care. But before we hop into today's episode, I gotta ask y'all, how often are you just getting by? Surviving, running on empty, exhausted? If your answer is a little more often than you'd like to admit, well, you're going to find a lot of peace over the course of this month. We're going to be talking about more than just bubble baths and pedicures. We're going to be diving into what self-care really looks like so that you can engage in your life in a way that leaves you feeling nourished on every level. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt. Here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Hey y'all, it's Mary, and I am so excited to introduce you to our very special guest today, Cherylanne Skolnicki. Lindsley and I interview Cherylanne in a fabulous conversation all around what it's like to prioritize self-care as a working mother. I thought I would bring along an expert who can actually talk about what it's like to juggle all the different roles of wife and mother and a business owner or employee, and how to do that in a way that I think is really fresh and practical. So I wanted to take a moment to introduce Cherylanne before we hop into today's episode and our interview with her. She is just amazing. She is one of America's leading authorities on work-life integration, helping working women live their happiest, most fulfilling lives. From her early days at a Fortune 500 company to founding the Brilliant Balance Company, where she leads a vibrant community of high-achieving women, she's become a go-to expert and trusted advisor for women who want to get the most out of life. She is a speaker. She has a fabulous podcast, and her work and advice has been featured in the Huffington Post, Forbes. She has appeared on TV, and she really is the expert on this work-life balance, productivity, and purpose. She graduated from Cornell University in 95 and holds an MBA from the, I'm going to see if I can say this, the Goethe School of Management at Emory University. I'm sure I totally butchered that. But she is one of Cincinnati's 100 Wise Women, a 40 under 40 honoree, a happy wife, and a proud mom of 3. And I'm excited to dive deep with her on really learning from her expertise some practical ways to incorporate self-care when you are juggling all the roles of wife and mother and business owner or employee, and find that sense of brilliant balance. So without further ado, here is Lindsley and I's interview with Cherylanne. Hey, everybody. It is Mary, and boy, do we have a really exciting, fun episode for you today. I am hanging out in the early morning hours with Lindsley Brooks. Hey, girl.
Hello.
We are sipping our coffee. We had a beautiful night last night. We went to a
fabulous concert.
If you have not listened to India Ari, please go listen to her. She is queen.
I was going to say, she's a goddess.
I mean, like, she stepped out on that stage and I was like, yes, ma'am. I want to embody that. I want to be that. I mean, she owned it.
We said we felt like we were in church last night, the kind of church we love.
It was awesome. It was so great. But we are feeling just, I don't know about you, but I'm like kind of bubbling over with some love, and just, it was like a symphony of light and love and joy. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
But we're going to continue our conversation today for this month's topic on self-care. Last week, Lindsley and I dove into the interpersonal, emotional self-care work that kind of accompanies some more of the basic ways that we take care of ourselves that we think about, like tending to our bodies and tending to just sort of our everyday, take a moment to breathe out of life kind of things. And we got into what does it look like to care for the actual self, to nurture ourselves emotionally. And I was laughing with Lindsley the other day because, as you both know, or as y'all know, both of us are divorced. We don't have children. And so
we both work and we juggle a lot of different things. And so self-care, I think for anybody can be a challenge and a little bit hard to navigate and find the time to pour into yourself. But there is a particular challenge that happens when you have children. And Lindsley and I just can't authentically speak to that.
Nope.
And so I thought, what better way to kind of talk about what it looks like to balance a career, what it looks like to balance just a relationship, and then also children in the mix. And so we've brought on a very special guest, Cherylanne Skolnicki. Did I say that right, Cherylanne?
You did.
Oh gosh, I had to like look at my
Yay.
notes. I was like, okay, let me make sure. And Cherylanne, I mean, as you heard in the bio that I shared with at the beginning of this podcast, she is just a powerhouse. But I think what you're going to find is that she is also very down to earth. She's going to tell it like it is, and I think give you a lot of hope in finding a balance when you have little ones, like tugging on your shirt, asking for things constantly, and figuring out essentially how to do life in a way that allows for life, allows for some space, allows for some what Cherylanne would call brilliant balance. So Cherylanne, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Man, I tell you what, you are really a fascinating woman. It's just so amazing to see what you have done with your career and starting in the corporate world and then moving through to become just such a powerful speaker and a coach. And so I would love to have you share a little bit about your journey of how you got to the place where I'm assuming there's some kind of breakdown story here where you go, I can't do it all and I got to change something. So I would love for you to walk us through sort of your journey, fast forwarding to get you where you are now, where you preach and teach about this kind of life work balance.
Yes. Well, it's always fun to take that trip down memory lane and think back on how you got to where you are today. So the short version of the story is I really always thought I was going to spend my whole life in corporate America. I was one of those kids who, if you asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I was like, I want to sit behind a desk and like give people orders. And, it was just very attractive idea of being a leader in business. And so I followed a really predictable path and got all my degrees in that and got my MBA and went to work for Procter & Gamble. And I was there for 15 years. Absolutely loved it, completely lived up to my expectations of what that kind of experience would be like. I ran really big brands. I traveled around the world. I ran big teams of people. It was, worked with great ad agencies. Never did a Super Bowl commercial. People always ask, did you ever do a Super Bowl commercial? But it was super fun. And then around about 15 years in, I really had this nudge. It was sort of my version of a midlife crisis, I think, to do something that felt more aligned with my purpose. So there's no like catastrophic story, except that I was really, really tired. And I'm like an overachiever to the core. And so knowing how to turn things off, like knowing where to say, this is enough for the day, or this is enough for the week or the project, was a skill I was really still trying to master. And because of that, I kept doing all these things like I'm going to work an 80% schedule, but still have a 100% job, or I'm going to work one day a week from home. And I kept trying to carve out these elements of balance. But truly, I was burning the candle at both ends. And so that coupled with this really strong nudge to say, I think there might be more to life for me than, selling more laundry detergent than my competitor, led me to look into like, where were my passions and what might a career rooted in them be like? And this is my second business. The first one I started was really connected to my passion of health and wellness. And so I spent about 5 years running that business, and then closed it and moved into this newer venture, which I've been doing for about 5 years, called Brilliant Balance. And, this is my life's work. It's so clear to me that all the pathways I've been on up until now have led to this place, both professionally, the experience I had running businesses at P&G, and personally, as my life has gotten more complicated with, first one, then two, then three children who, now are living really active lives of their own. They're 9, 12, and 15.
Wow.
And so, we're in that full chapter where a lot of my life is lived driving a car with small people in it from place to place. And tending to my business, which is really focused on helping this generation of women who were told we could have it all, like really flat out promised we could have it all, figure out how to manage it once we have it. And that's what Brilliant Balance is all about.
I the last part that you shared about being promised that we could have it all, I want to like zero in on that for a second, because I think that, don't you just feel like that's like the greatest illusion? It's like you can have a happy life, be a happy wife, happy mother, happy business, equal rights, all the things that we were promised. And then what I find, and Cherylanne, I'd love to see if this is something that you get with your clients too, is that the result ends up being overwhelm, exhaustion, shame,
Burnout.
because we feel like we can't, we're not doing enough. And and burnout. I mean, like across the board, it's too much.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I think that perfectly encapsulates the before picture. All the women I have the opportunity to work with would say everything you just said in the before picture. And the after picture that I'm seeking is they really do feel like they have it all, but they've redefined what, having it all isn't doing it all. That's the phrase I'll often say to them.
That's good.
So you can have all those roles and you can have all those elements that you named in your life, but you're not going to be doing everything that your 12-year-old self thought you were going to do in those roles.
Totally.
Right? So we all have this vision of what does it look like to be a great mom or a great wife or a great, CEO or whatever it is. And I think that's where there's this gap, is the picture of what we think we have to do to have that is just misguided. So when we reshape it and start really getting to the elements that matter in each of those roles, then I think you actually can have it all. It just, the fraction of things you're actually doing is different.
Yeah, it's like redefining what success means to you and helping
Totally.
people get clear on that. Yeah, that's powerful.
Well, and I think too, what came to mind when you were talking was this belief that in order to have all those things, we do have to do more. It's that the hustle fallacy. Like I gotta hustle, spend more hours at work overtime, stay late, have my kids in all the sports, all the activities, make sure that we're making dinner from home. And there is this idea that we've taken perfectionism and we've just taken it and wiped it on the entire stroke of our lives. And so now there's just pressure to hustle, do more. And then we think that is going to somehow allow us to wake up someday and go, I just love my life, and it's like, we feel robbed. I think women oftentimes feel robbed that isn't their experience. And then they go, man, something must be wrong with me. And then it goes internal blame, right?
Yes. Yeah, the skill that I see that's missing is making choices. I use the term curating because I think it's really the crispest word. Is, what does it look like to curate the elements of your life, what you will and will not do, and feel really at ease and at peace with those choices. So if I love making a family dinner every night from scratch because it's my greatest pleasure, to gather those kids around the table and feed them, then I'm going to do that. But it doesn't mean that that's right for you. You may be perfectly content to find a much more efficient means of feeding your family and use that time to do something else that's really deeply important to you. So that curation is really ours to do, but we think there's some external set of rules we're supposed to measure ourselves by. So, when you said perfectionism, I think we're constantly looking at some other model and saying, well, if that's how she does it, maybe that's how I'm supposed to do it too.
Yeah, it's that comparison game that is just so dangerous, because you're right. What is valuable to me is going to be different than what's valuable to somebody else, and where I want to spend my time and where I want to, have a little extra focus because it brings me joy or pleasure or just something really important to me. Just sort of putting the blinders on for ourselves and judging, okay, what do I want my life to really look like, and creating space
for those things versus pouring into things that I think I'm supposed to do or have to
Right.
do in order to be a good mom or a good wife or a good business owner, whatever that might be. And so I know that one of your specialties is self-care, which is of course why we wanted to have you on the podcast today. And I think that you can speak to self-care specifically for moms because it's a little bit different. I
Yeah.
think there's like little nuances to that I want to get into, but I know that for you, you have come up with some amazing and creative tips on how to take care of yourself, specifically as a working mother. And so I
Yeah.
was wondering if you could share with us your tips on how to prioritize self-care in your life and like how to practically do that.
Hey y'all, I just wanted to interrupt this episode real quick to remind you to subscribe to this podcast. I know that emails get lost in your spam folder, so subscribing means my episodes come right to your phone. So go ahead, hit that quick little subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the Living Fully Alive episodes. Plus, in addition to subscribing to the podcast, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. I don't know if you know this, but I have been releasing guided meditations every Monday over on YouTube, and you're not going to hear them here. So if you've been wanting to start an easy meditation practice, subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on my short 15-minute guided meditations. All right, now back to this week's episode.
Yes. And I love that you said that word because I am just very practical about this. Like self-care, the language sometimes I think veers toward luxury. Moms can internalize this as, well, that's a luxury I don't have time for.
Right.
And I'm just much more practical about it, which is, it is a necessity that you have energy to get through your day. And self-care is a lovely way of saying, like, how are you going to fuel yourself and charge yourself so that you have enough battery life to go get through your day as a mom, as an entrepreneur, or whatever your professional life looks like, and just as a good human, who wants to contribute to her community. So for me, it's that battery pack. What are the things that really charge us to get through a day or a week or a lifetime, right? Where we feel good, where we feel vibrant and alive while we're doing it and not run down. Like we're just giving everybody the dregs that we have at the end of the day.
Totally.
So
I
you
love
want me
that.
to talk about a couple of these practices
Yes, that'd be
do?
great. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So, the first one for me that is non-negotiable, and I have done a 180 on this in my own life, is sleep. If you would have talked to me in my corporate era, right, when that was what my life looked like, I would have said, look, sleep when you're dead. Like there's too much to do, right? Life is full and I have so many things to do. I have no interest in sleeping. And I got as little sleep as I could function on during that era. I see it completely differently today. Sleep is non-negotiable for me. And so when I tell people that I regularly get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, they often don't believe me, honestly, right? Because it's like, doesn't sound possible. But it is the foundational key to every single thing in my life working better. And it's the first thing I teach the women that I coach. So everything is less important than sleep if you want to live life fully charged. And this narrative that, we're not allowed to sleep or it's some kind of badge of honor that we were up till 2 a.m, baking cupcakes for the school bake sale, it's just misguided and it's really robbing us of our peak potential during the day.
I see that so often where, and I don't think it's just mothers. I think it's just our society in general that we relate on our deprivation of sleep and our, how stressed we are. And there is some sort of like sick pleasure we get at almost bragging that we've gotten, I'm operating on 3 hours of sleep or I'm so stressed out. And it's almost like we're wanting a pat on the back, like, good job, you are killing it. In reality, when somebody says that to me, I just think, oh my God. Like I have so much compassion because I think, how are you functioning?
Right. And what you hear in it is you haven't learned yet to make choices and set boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's different. You two went to a great concert last night. You probably didn't get enough sleep. That's a choice, right?
Yeah.
I am always telling people, I'm not saying never stay up late and have a great time. It's when it's a chronic lifestyle. And for most working moms I know, it's because they've adopted the night shift. So they're saying, look, I have to leave work, quote unquote, on time, which they now think is early, right? So I have to leave at the end of a normal work day to go home and take kids to practices or make dinner or whatever I'm going to do homework. And then they pick that laptop up again at 9 o'clock at night and work until they can't keep their eyes open.
Yeah.
And that's the piece I'm trying to, I'm on a mission to end that night shift because it's just interrupting our vitality during the rest of the day.
You know, I'm curious, Cherylanne. So I work with a lot of people in network marketing who are working a full-time job and then also building their secondary business in the evenings and sort of during that night shift. And I think that, and honestly, that's for me, how I had built a lot of my business at the beginning was working in the evenings, which I'm 100% on board with you and agree. Like the night shift has got to stop. It is not healthy. And I ran myself into the ground, into burnout. So I've firsthand experienced the negative side effects of that. But for someone who feels like, okay, this is the only time that I have after the kids have gone to sleep, this is that window that I can build this funnel that's going to, help me get to this place of freedom. How do you set up healthy boundaries in that and still honor the fact that you're trying to build something, but have a good balance in it and prioritize sleep?
Yeah, first of all, I think everyone has a different biorhythm. So for some people, that like my sister-in-law, that's a great zone of the day for her. So 9 p.m. to midnight, she's kind of at her peak. I'm just not. It's absolutely not a time I can function. So I think if you're going to run a side hustle, don't you want to have your good quality energy devoted to it? It feels like it has to fit into a zone of the day or the week where you can think straight. And because everything takes longer when you're already exhausted when you're trying to do it. So my counsel would be, can you find a zone of time during your waking hours? For me, that would be like between 6 a.m. I'm kind of wide awake by 6. I get up earlier than that, but I'm wide awake by 6. And I would say after 6 p.m., you probably don't want me doing anything important.
Right.
I'm just not that good at it after 6 p.m. So finding a zone somewhere in there, if you're going to work on that side hustle where you can give it quality energy, you may find you need less time because you're more focused and you're sharper during the work.
Yeah. And just, I think, buying into the idea that sleep is a non-negotiable. And I love that we talked about that on our episode last week, is finding those self-care, non-negotiable boundaries. And we didn't talk about sleep, which I'm so glad that we're talking about it now, because that really has got to be a non-negotiable. Like, come hell or high water, I'm going to get my ass in bed
That's
by
right.
10 p.m. or whatever it is. So I can get at least, 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep. And even just experiment with that. Cause I think just try that for a little bit and see how it shifts your focus, your productivity. I know for me, it is
a
game changer.
Yes. Well, Cherylanne, don't you have something? I remember hearing that you had something that helps people figure out how to sleep better. Like, cause that is a whole process in itself. Don't you offer something like that where you have like,
we do. We have a 7-day sleep makeover that gives you like top tips on this. So
that's awesome.
I'm happy to share that with y'all.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why, you were just saying it, and I think it's so important. The boundaries on your day. Just imagine if you say it's non-negotiable, I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep. You have by definition said the rest of my life has to fit into 16 hours a day. And now we have a force helping us make choices. Right? If we don't set that boundary, then we just creep. And so we don't make the choices because we're like, oh, I have this overflow capacity. And I'll just use that overflow capacity until it's gone, which is when I literally can't keep my eyes open. So we're forcing good behavior. We're forcing curation when sleep becomes non-negotiable.
I love that. My dad would say living by design, not default.
Yes.
And I think
there's an intentionality.
Exactly. And you create that space where you go, I am in control of the clock versus the clock being in control of me. And I'm the one who is choosing how I'm spending my time, what's most important. Because otherwise, everything in your day feels really urgent. It feels really important. And this is why I see women put off self-care, is because the biggest belief is there's not enough time.
That's right.
And because then it's the belief that they are a victim of their clock, rather than going, I get to set the parameters and boundaries for this that are life-giving for me. And I love that word curation that you use. I think that's just so beautiful, because it's like intentionally designing that day, including and starting with foundational things like sleep. So I want to hear your other tips, because I know that like this is just like the start, the baseline, the
For the
foundation.
iceberg.
Yeah.
Right.
So what's the
Okay,
next
so
one?
we wake up rested, right? Which if you did nothing else but that would be transformative for the working moms listening. The next thing that I am really just unapologetic about is needing a little time alone every day. And this is my personal number two. It makes such a difference for me where to have some even small zone in my day where no one needs me. No one's dictating what I think about, what problem I'm trying to solve, what I'm looking at, what I'm listening to. And the moms listening will understand this, watch me, listen to me, come over here and help me solve this. Like it's a nonstop, right? When you are raising children. And add in your life at work, where often everyone working with you needs the same kind of things. Hey, look at this document, sign this, help me solve this problem. We have this meeting to go to. So having some zone in the day where it's just you is powerful. And most working moms will say it's just not possible. So my advice here is start small. This might be 5 minutes here and there that you can squirrel away and have nobody needing you, but really working up to a solid 1 hour or a couple of 30-minute blocks is transformative. And it might require, getting up early, shifting the actual structure of your day so that you can find these zones of time. But it is possible. I haven't met anyone yet where it's 100% impossible. And it really makes a difference.
And that's so fascinating to think about the things that we tell ourselves as to why it's not possible.
Right.
And it's challenging those set of beliefs as to why we think we can't do it. Because I think, gosh, what if you even just went out to your car for 5 minutes, shut the door,
breather.
had a little moment? It's like,
Walk
or
to
I
the
think about
mailbox.
walk to the mailbox. There's nap time. There are those moments within the day, but it is about, I think everything's going to go back to being intentional about going, this is a need, and I'm going to prioritize this need.
And sometimes it's how you define it. So, for example, most people have some time in their car, but they don't necessarily really click in to, oh, this is time alone. Right. So what do? We get in the morning commute, we turn the radio on, and then somebody's talking at us again. And we're not in charge of that, of what we're thinking about. So if you can look creatively at your whole day and say, where am I actually alone? But I might not have realized I'm alone in that moment. It really expands it. I think I get several hours a day where I'm actually alone. But some of them are creative, right? If I drive a kid one direction and we're talking the whole time in the car, but then I have to turn around and come back, I'm alone during that return. So being really present during that can really make a difference.
So brilliant. That is like, that's money right there.
Yep.
Just a new way of seeing it. Okay. So what is the third tip of self-care for you?
So the third is everyone's favorite. And so I call this tea time. And the idea is taking a midday, very short break to refresh, right? Such a civilized idea from the British of tea time.
Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not talking about like getting out the big silver tea service here, although you're welcome to, right? If that's available, that's awesome. I have always said in my office, I'm going to have a silver tea service. And I just told my team, I think I'm going to bring it in. Like, I think it's time for us to like amp up this ritual a bit. It can be literal tea. It doesn't have to be. The idea is a few minutes in the afternoon to collect yourself. And I'll tell you the origin story for this. In my first business, I was doing health coaching, talking a lot about, women who wanted to eat healthier and take better care of themselves. And I was working with a lot of moms with young children at home. And I noticed that the hardest time of the day for them to navigate was the middle of the afternoon. Like right around 3:00, they were standing at the pantry and standing at the refrigerator, and they were really hard on themselves about like, I almost can't stop. And what I learned was they were anticipating the stress of either a child waking up from a nap or kids coming home from school. And that anticipatory stress was causing like anxiety, right? Same thing happens in the corporate world where it's just the collective stress of the day has started to accumulate. So I can remember in my corporate life, I would go into the ladies' room in the middle of the afternoon and I looked like death, like mascara is starting to run down and your lipstick is off and your hair is a mess. And I was like, okay, definitely time for a little bit of a refresh in that mid-afternoon. So if this idea of tea time is a few minutes to gather yourself, I love to actually make a cup of tea, run into the ladies' room, like freshen everything up, maybe brush my teeth. And then you come into that next zone of the day feeling like you're ready for it, right? Instead of feeling like you're kind of coming in on one wheel. It's a much more present and peaceful way to enter that next zone of the day.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Okay. So then what is the fourth one you've got for us?
So the fourth piece is a meditation practice. And meditation is so scary for a lot of women, but I like to think of this as a very short, not fancy meditation break. Just a few minutes even of breathing is great. It's a great place to start. And my personal cue to meditate, and I had a teacher, Brenda Villa, give me this. She said, whenever your thoughts are not serving you, that's your cue. And that is, I can't tell you how amazing that one idea has been, that if I get into a thought pattern during the day where it's not serving me, before I let it derail my whole day, just to pause, take a few breaths, kind of hit the reset button and get a new thought pattern in place really makes a difference.
What's so interesting, and I love that you're bringing this up, is I think that with meditation, we get so intimidated by it because we think we have to block out an hour of time in the morning that really we feel like we don't have. And I know that there are seasons where that might be something that you choose to do and really commit to a longer meditation practice. But I have these guided meditations that are 15 minutes or less, because what I found is, and I trained in as a yoga instructor and meditation teacher, and what I found is that you're exactly right. It's like we need those shorter little breaks throughout our day when we notice that we are moving out of alignment, when we're going off into thoughts that are not serving us. And meditation doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes.
Right.
It literally can be, like you said, just a couple breaths, just a pause. Like if you think about meditation as a concept rather than a length of time, it's like anything can become a meditation.
Even the tea time, I feel like could even be your moment to have that pause. Yeah,
totally. So I love that it's almost like these little micro moments throughout the day of just slowing down and just in a way checking in, like, wait, how am I doing? How am I feeling? What do I need? Do I need some water? Do I need to go to the bathroom? Right. Do I need to stretch?
Put my lipstick back on.
Right.
Totally.
All the things.
Yeah.
It's just awareness. Like that's for me, the reframe that helped around meditation was bringing my awareness back to checking in with myself. Right. And then using that to sort of change direction whenever I needed it. So like a little shower for your insides.
Ooh,
I love that. Because that you're right. Like the meditation piece, I almost hear you saying it's like when you notice your thoughts even kind of going into a funky place too. It's just bringing yourself back, in that moment. Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting. I think with all of these, I know we've got one more to go, but I think when we think about everything that you're mentioning, all of it could be wrapped into an element of mindfulness where you're just sort of becoming aware of your needs, of what's showing up, and intentionally choosing to prioritize the nurturing, the loving, the caring, the, moment of pausing. And it really starts with that awareness that, hey, something's off here and something's asking for some attention. Something is needing some just a little extra loving, a little extra pause. And so I just wanted to mention that because I think that with everything you're saying, it's like, we got to pause and check in and see, all right, where am I at? And what is it that I need?
Well, and also to tag on to that, I'm thinking like, I don't know because I'm not a mom, but I know that culturally it's that element of I have to make the kids the priority. And yet if you're not taking care of yourself and having that mindfulness about even just the self-care of self, then you're right. You're not going to be able to be that mom element and hold the space for your kids like you would need to be. So it's like these have to become the priority. Otherwise, and we just don't ever think that it's like last on the totem list.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you what happens is, so because that's my audience or working moms, they are so aware of when they are cranky, when they are short-tempered, when they're not present and patient with the kids. And there's so much guilt that we carry. But what I think a lot of people are skipping over is what's the root cause of that?
Yeah.
Why are you cranky? Why are you moody? Why are you short-tempered? Well, it's all these things. If you're not checked in with yourself and you haven't asked yourself, what do I need, much less given it to yourself, there really isn't. You don't have we're not that good, right? You're not that good as a human that you can be that selfless all the time. So it just makes it easier to be giving and present and patient if your own needs have been met. And so these elements of, checking in and saying, it's like putting the self back in self-care. Like what do I actually need right now? You won't know if you don't pause to think. And sometimes it's not a really hard workout that you need, and sometimes it's not a visit to the spa. It's like really getting conscious about what you do need through these little moments of intentionality can help you get what most moms want, which is I want to be fully present and patient and warm with these children. And it's hard when you're not feeling like you've taken care of yourself.
Well, and what's interesting, and I just want to bring this up. I've actually, I don't know why this came to my mind, and I've never really been able to ask this because a lot of my friends are just either single women in their 40s or divorced, or their kids are older or whatever. But one of the things that I see on like Facebook all the times are these videos, these YouTube videos that moms make that are real hilarious. I mean, they're so funny. I can't relate to it from a mom, but they're still funny, where they're running around like crazy, disheveled, in their pajamas until the end of the day. But the joke is, as long as they can have a glass of wine in their hand, they'll be okay. And it's like this whole like joke around mothers drinking wine to survive the day. And it's this hilarious thing that, gets millions and millions of views. And I just kind of like off topic, but I'm just curious, like, because to me that feels like such a false sense of self-care. But I'm curious how you interpret when you see like those videos going viral, for example.
I mean, you couldn't have asked me a question I care about more. This is this is what I refer to as the hot mess mom phenomenon, right? It's become like one of the archetypes of motherhood is I'm just trying to survive from coffee time to wine time, and you get that she barely makes it to the bus stop and she's in her bathrobe with a coffee mug. And then the end of the day, all the crazy, right, with the wine. I fundamentally believe we can do better. That's not what we should be aspiring to. And I'm not taking away the pleasure of a glass of wine. I love a good glass of wine, right? It makes me very happy. But again, it comes back to, is it a crutch? Are we using it to say like the only way I can get through this day is that's waiting for me at the end? Or is it a pleasure? And so when you've balanced out the day and had these moments of taking care of yourself, it's not a need. It's not like this, finish line that you're collapsing into. It's a pleasure when you choose to have it. So I'm really on a mission to end this hot mess mom as an aspirational standard. It's of course we all have a bad day. Of course there's days where you go to the bus stop not pulled together, but I don't think that's the lifestyle we're aspiring to. And so what I really want to be careful about is that, we don't adopt a belief that it is what it is. And this is what we have to survive. And there's no other way, because there fundamentally is another way. It requires a bit more intentionality.
Yeah. And I love that, because you're so right. I mean, I think that women see that, moms see that, and it's like, that's the option. I mean, it feels like, okay, that's the only option I should say. And and because we're making it funny, it's like, to me, it's, it's like somebody who hates themselves and then they make a joke about themselves.
Self-deprecating.
Self-deprecating. It's
Mhm.
almost like in that kind of line of
Mhm.
comedy, where it's like, don't our hearts, aren't they just aching for more
Mm.
than this? Like, surely that is not fulfilling on like a soul level. And I say that with zero judgment, because I don't have that experience. Who's to say I wouldn't be in that category? But I mean, I do believe I have a lot of, mindfulness that I can put towards life. But I think that just acknowledging that it's okay to want more than the hot mess
Yes.
mom life,
Yes.
that's possible to have something different.
It's possible. That's the most important thing is, nobody gave us a playbook for how we're supposed to be able to have all these elements of our lives that we want, but manage them with grace, right? And manage them with efficiency. And that really is what I'm so passionate about doing, is giving women that playbook, because once you have it, what we hear from everyone in the community is, I just didn't understand it could be this way. Like, I feel so much better and so much more at ease. And that is a powerful transformation that, I want for everyone.
Wow. I love that. Well, keep doing it,
I
girl.
know, yeah.
Okay. So we have time, and I want to hear the fifth tip for self-care, because this, I feel like, is maybe my favorite.
So I want the perfect place. Yes, it's the perfect place to wrap. So the last one, really, it correlates to the end of the day. So if we want to have that great night of sleep, I love a luxe wind down routine. And the idea is that so many of us are slamming into the finish line of the day. Like, we're running full tilt, right? And then again, you kind of sit down on that couch for the night shift, fall asleep with the laptop, on your lap, and maybe a kid under one arm. And then you're stumbling up to bed in the middle of the night. And it's really not a good way to get a good night of sleep. So a wind down routine is the idea of taking this last piece of the day, maybe 30 minutes to an hour, where the entire household starts to come down. And the mood and the energy level starts to downshift, as it should. So it's things like dimming the lights in the house, or turning off some of the lights, at least changing the music, so the soundtrack of the house is in more of a relaxing rhythm. And then having a few things you do for yourself around beauty, like maybe it's taking a shower in the evening and having a great face serum, or an amazing candle that you burn. And then really making sure your sleeping experience is conducive to sleep, like great sheets that are clean, and smell great, and a great loungewear outfit. Like, I think, again, if you go back to that hot mess mom thing we were talking about, what goes with that? It's the ratty t-shirt and the ripped sweatpants. And then that's what we're climbing into bed in. And so, if the bed wasn't even made in the first place, and then this whole thing is like it doesn't really put you in that zone for sleep. So you want to end the day feeling like you're like celebrating a job well done, and then preparing for the day ahead, and able to clear your mind and get some rest. So I love a good luxe wind down routine.
That's so great. And you really don't hear people talk about that a lot. I mean, a lot of it's making
morning
sure
routines.
You get your morning routine.
Right.
Yeah, totally. And so this is nice, because it's like slowing down to actually take the time to end the day with, in a way, it's almost like a gratitude. Like, all right, let's take the time to really honor what we've done today, take our time to love on ourselves, slow down, give ourselves time where we're not just like collapsing into bed.
Well, and it's almost like that prepares you so much better to sleep, and then it brings you back to the first step of how important sleep is. You can really only have as good sleep as you have to prepare yourself to go into that state. So that's brilliant. Yeah.
I love that. Well, I'm so curious, not only for myself, but for everybody who is listening, where can our lovely listeners find you, learn more about you? Do you have any exciting things coming up down the pipeline that you would love for our audience to know? This is your time to just let us know how we can stay connected to you.
Oh, well, thank you. I think the easiest one to spell is brilliantbalance.net. So the website is actually at my name, CherylanneSkolnicki.com, but we can get you there from either site, or you can link it in the show notes.
Yeah, we will definitely do that.
You can find us at all the places. On Facebook, you can search. We have a really active group called Brilliant Balance. Very simple to find us, and really great discussion happening in that group all the time. I have a podcast called Brilliant Balance, so that's pretty easy to find in Apple Podcasts and all the places. And on Instagram, I am at Skolnicki, and the company is at Brilliant_Balance.
Awesome. Well, we will definitely link to all of that in the show notes. But everybody, I mean, truly stay connected to Cherylanne, to Brilliant Balance. The podcast is amazing. And I haven't been inside of your Facebook group, but I'm like, all right, even though I'm not a mom, I'm gonna go sneak in there.
Are non-moms allowed?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for giving us just like a real honest look at what it's like to juggle all of this as a working mother, and then also how to curate, how to intentionally design a life that includes balance, that includes taking care of the self, and giving us a hopeful picture that it is possible and that it's so life-giving when you prioritize just those little moments for the self. It has just been such a gift to have you on. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely to meet you both.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, guys, make sure to check out the podcast next week. Next week, we start a new month all centered around abundance and money, which we're so excited to get into that topic for next month. But of course, until then, remember that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. We'll see you guys next week. Bye. If you love today's episode, make sure to share it with your girlfriends and invite them into this month's topic of self-care. And if you want to keep the discovery journey going of living more fully alive, check out all my past episodes from the podcast over at maryhyatt.com/show. Plus, you'll be able to grab the show notes for this episode along with the essential oil recipe of the month. Again, that's maryhyatt.com/show. See y'all next week.